just to be clear, everybody sees the cover slide, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
All right, great. I'm gonna hit admit all, and I'm just gonna keep an eye on this as we go. And Jennifer, once you start actually speaking, that's when I'll hit stop screen share, okay?
Okay, sounds
All right,
good.
here we go.
Break a leg.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. Yeah, we're just waiting a few more minutes. We'll give it maybe until 5:01 till we get started. But yeah, just want to say hello and welcome. Lots of familiar faces. Hello and welcome. Well, we're just going to give it maybe one more minute or so and let people come in, and then we'll get started. Thank you for being here.
I'm just going to introduce ourselves. We belong to Benjamin Winans.
Hello. Yeah, thank you. Excellent. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you.
You as well.
Welcome.
Great. Okay. Well, good. Why don't we go ahead and get started because we have kind of a short time. So my name is Jennifer Jeong. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I'm the Outreach and Public Engagement Coordinator at Stamps Gallery, which is part of the Penny W. Stamps School of Art and Design at the University of Michigan. I am pleased to welcome you all here to the Artist Talks and virtual opening reception for Heartened Surfaces, the 2021 MFA Thesis Exhibition. A big thank you to all of the artists for being here to share their work and thoughts, and to all of you for joining us today. This event is being held in conjunction with and to celebrate the opening of Heartened Surfaces, the 2021 Stamps MFA Student Thesis Exhibition. The artists included in the exhibition are Christine Bruening, Nathan Byrne, Rey Jeong, and Benjamin Winans. Work is featured in individual exhibitions and in the collaborative exhibition titled The Dream Is Not All Dream. All exhibitions are in view at Stamps Gallery from March 12th through May 2nd, 2021. Following guidance from university administrators and public health officials in response to COVID-19, Stamps Gallery is open to UM faculty, staff, and students with a valid M card. And if you do have a valid M card and would like to come visit us, you are welcome to do so Tuesdays and Fridays from 2 to 7 p.m. We are unable to welcome the general public to the gallery at this time. For more information and to review our visitor policies, please visit our Stamps Gallery webpage on the Stamps School of Art and Design website that we will put into the chat for you to check out. Great, so now I'm going to turn it over to Stamps Gallery Director Srimoi Mitra.
Thank you, Jennifer. Hello, everyone, and welcome. I'd like to share with you just a few words about Stamps Gallery, and then we will get started. So Stamps Gallery is an 8,000 square foot public center for contemporary art and design in downtown Ann Arbor that is part of the Penny W. Stamps School of Art and Design. Building on the school's strong tradition of excellence, thought leadership, and community engagement, our goal is to develop innovative and scholarly exhibitions, publications, and public programs that foster inclusive platforms for presentation, discussion, and inquiry into the urgent questions and concerns of our time. The gallery functions as an incubator and lab for contemporary artists and designers to explore ideas and projects that catalyze positive social change. A commitment to social justice informs our work in all we do, developing exhibitions, programs, and publications that inspire new ways of looking, making, and thinking. Every year, we present 2 to 3 student exhibitions and 3 to 5 exhibitions with artists and designers working locally, nationally, and internationally. The gallery is an expansion of the classroom, a creative pedagogical space. This is an important resource for students at U of M who benefit from an opportunity to obtain hands-on experience and curatorial practices, research, and installation skills, working with leading-edge artists, designers, curators, writers, as part of the Stamps Gallery team. Stamps Gallery also serves the broader cultural and artistic community in Ann Arbor and Southeast Michigan, who have become active participants in the gallery. So today is the first day of spring, a time of renewal and pride for all of us at the Stamps community as we present our virtual and kick off our virtual opening for the MFA exhibition. So it is my pleasure to invite you all here today to celebrate the 2021 MFA exhibition, and big congratulations to Christine Bruening, Nathan Byrne, Rey Jeong, and Benjamin Winans. Last but not the least, we continue to uphold and honor the COVID-19 health and safety guidelines. Stamps Gallery's webpage at the Stamps School of Art and Design website functions as a vital repository of information, images of the exhibition. So please be sure to visit our virtual exhibition, which has detailed images and information about the show to delve deeper into the works. So without further ado, I'll turn it back to Jennifer, who will, so we can get started on the program. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Jinwei. So just really quickly before we move on to the presentations, I just want to give you a quick rundown of the event and go over some housekeeping. This event is being recorded, so if you do not want to be in the recording, please turn off your video and ask questions only through the chat. Also, if you can just keep yourself on mute throughout the event unless you are speaking, we would greatly appreciate it. So following opening remarks, David Chung will be introducing each of the artists. Each artist will be giving a 10-minute presentation about their work and practice. Following the artist presentations, we will open it up to a public Q&A where we will bring all of you into the conversations and take some of your questions. If you do have questions, please feel free to add those to the chat. We'll be monitoring the chat throughout the event. So you can post questions at any time, but yeah, just keep an eye that we won't start taking some of your questions until after the presentations. Great, so now I'd like to turn it over to Stamps School of Art and Design professor and director of the MFA program, David Chung, to introduce the event and all the artists. Thanks.
Hello, everyone. It's great to see you all here on this beautiful Saturday afternoon. And welcome. I'd like to thank Jennifer, Shimoe, and Joe for all their work in supporting this MFA exhibition. Also want to thank my colleague Osman Khan, who was director when this class started a year and a half ago. So thank you, Osman. Well, it's been an extraordinary year, probably the likes of which we will not see again in a lifetime. Our graduating class, Christine, Rey, Ben, and Nate, have been through a lot. Program modifications and changes to follow the guidelines in response to the pandemic. In the middle of their time here, the program came to a screeching halt. They were shut out of their studios for months. When I met with them at the end of the summer last year to get an assessment of whether they were ready to continue, they unanimously came together and said without hesitation that they were ready to go with their thesis exhibitions with no delays. I was taken aback and inspired by their determination. So to Christine, Ray, Ben, and Nate, congratulations and thank you for your commitment to work under such conditions. Cheers. So I invite you to raise a glass in this virtual space, and I raise a toast to our cohort of graduating second years. Cheers. And oh, please unmute your button and say cheers.
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 Congratulations.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Yay. Proud of all of you.
Yay.
Great. Today we have a virtual opening that I hope will be able to express the same sense of achievement as the in-person event. And I thank you for your attendance here today. Our second years have tackled a number of pressing topics on physical sensibilities through their thesis work, including race, culture, popular culture, and transformative space. We'll be hearing from each one of them through short 10-minute artist talks. However, as we wake up and read the daily news and learn about the tragic shootings in Atlanta, I want to remark how extraordinarily prescient Rey Jeong's work has become by focusing on bringing out the stories and histories of Asian immigrant women. Her work is directly addressing the issue of stereotyping an often misunderstood group of people. Rey will be presenting last, and we look forward to hearing from her. First to present is Ben Winans. Similar to Rey in the sense that Ben seemed to have foretold the future, he began 2 years ago his very personal exploration of the cultural dilemma of being raised a Southern white Christian and the meanings behind its iconography. These issues became fully manifested in the January 6th riots in Washington. Benjamin Winans was born and raised in the American South until at the age of 10, his parents became Southern Baptist missionaries in the small African nation of Mauritius. After briefly returning to the United States, his family relocated to Japan, where he lived until graduating high school. Benjamin joins the stamps community after 5 years at Triple Stamp Press, a commercial water-based screen printing company based in Richmond, Virginia. He received his BFA with high honors from VCU in painting and printmaking. Please welcome Ben Winans.
Thank you so much for this wonderful introduction, David, and thank you so much for your leadership during this time. I'm going to share my screen now. All right, and good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for giving your time to listen to my cohort and I talk about our work. This year has been a difficult one, to say the least, and it is such an achievement to be talking to you about a thesis show installed in a gallery of work made during a global pandemic and in the midst of American cultural reckoning. This combination has altered the way I think about my artwork. As such, I am aware that as I present it to you, I am also in the process of getting to know it myself. This talk will be an introduction to my practice for those of you who do not know it, and for those more familiar, I will share with you some new insights. Communion is a sharing of one's intimate thoughts, especially in spiritual matters. In my thesis work, I propose art practice as communion, offering to you my upbringing in Southern evangelical Christianity, and with it, my doubts and my loss of faith. My questioning is manifested in the altered ruins and artifacts of American Christianity, presented to test their relationships to history and to reveal greater societal undercurrents, asking us all to imagine reckoning and reconciliation for the future. Broadly, my artwork is institutional critique, that is to say, the work questions systems at work in the world. At its very core lies the fact that no matter how far I move away from the evangelicalism of my childhood, I will always be evangelical. It is the way my mind has been conditioned throughout my life. But the question is this: When we all, each of us, examine the systems of belief that define us, what is exposed? In order to dig into this question, I explore what communications scholar Carolyn Kitch has described as public memory. These identities, national and regional, as well as societal and individual, are located on the edge of our lives, hovering, ready to be invoked or revised, acted upon or merely contemplated, inspiring us or boring us. The first piece of mind encountered as you enter Stamps Gallery is this sculpture titled Reckoning. It is constructed from church pews, broken apart with an axe, built up, set on fire, saved, and blackened with a torch. It is created to reference two artifacts that live powerfully in the public memory of Americans: the raising of the flag at Iwo Jima and Emanuel Lutz's famous painting, Washington Crossing the Delaware. Each of these works inspires patriotism, nationalism, and exceptionalism. In the case of the photo from Iwo Jima, the form has been sculpted and cast in bronze and was used to inspire the National Marine Museum in Quantico, Virginia, each in monumental form. Reckoning adopts the language of monumentality, a piece fixed in time, but something is also terribly wrong. It looks as though it is deconstructing itself, bursting the plinth that contains it, holding on to its pieces, and struggling to hold its flag high. The flag itself is not an American flag. It is represented as is represented in the famous references. It is instead a mixing of the American flag and the lesser-known Christian flag. Put together, they represent the end goal of Christian nationalist movement, a theocratic society built on a corrupted view that God has chosen the United States and that its citizens must follow a certain view of the scriptures in order to maintain his blessing upon the nation. I sincerely believe that the philosophy of Jesus, as written in the New Testament, is a vision of society built on deep and crazy love, one that has profound implications and a powerful social safety net, that sees the rich giving everything of themselves for the sake of the poor, that sees the powerful humbled and on bended knees, ready to empower the lives of others. However, this vision is one that you will not often see taught from the pulpits and stages of televangelists and celebrity preachers throughout America. It does not match the nature of power that has taken hold of religious leaders as they advance themselves based on a measure of a certain American dream. I believe that the American political structure and American evangelical Christianity have caused harm to not only this nation, but to the globe. I also believe that the Christian tenets of forgiveness, redemption, and reconciliation have the powerful potential to provide healing and allow us to create a whole and healthy society for future generations. This belief is at the core of communion. As the viewer enters the chapel-like gallery, they encounter what looks like a normal pew sitting on a red carpet. Turning, the viewer can see the pew faces a flag limply hanging on a white wall. It is the recognizable blue with white stars of the American flag, but the red stripes representing the blood of patriotism and courage shed for the freedom of Americans has been removed, leaving only a field of bleached cotton. In form, there is the realization that, hanging as it is, the flag looks like the floating hood of a Klansman. This layer of white supremacy moves under the surface of all of my work, though never is it explicitly referenced. This is important to understand as I ask you to dig into the work with me, adopting the strategy of Nietzsche, who advocated sounding the idols with the hammer of critical, philosophical, and I would add visual language to find if they ring true. Not everything is as it seems on the surface. Once the Klan hood is recognized, one may remember the rubble of pews and reckoning, and how, if history is considered, they evoke the public memory of church burnings and bombings, specific targets of white domestic terrorists to disrupt the church, which is the historic heart of community. With the understanding that certain violence underscores my work, an investigation of the title card of the pew itself reveals that it has been refinished with blood. Forming an inverted conversation with the symbolic absence in the flag, the very real corruption of the pew itself lies under a surface that looks entirely ordinary. The viewer is meant to interact with this work. Above the pew hangs a speaker which plays a long-form conversation between myself and my father as we walk around the James River in my hometown of Richmond, Virginia. During this conversation, we discuss political difference, Christianity, art, worship, and his experience fighting racism in a church he served in South Carolina. Behind the pew hang 3 photographs, 2 self-portraits titled Deconstruction and Deconstruction 2, which serve as process documentation and provokers of meditation, and also a 3rd photo of a sculpture sitting in a church sanctuary. Also behind the pew is a podium on which sits a handmade book containing 2 statements. One is a letter to the church, condemning it for not living up to the charge for doing justice and loving mercy. The other, a critique of the academic world for its blindness and lack of recognition of the symbols so dominant in news coverage of the January 6th Capitol riots, heavy with Christian nationalism. Mounted in the hymn rack, an LCD screen scrolls through phrases taken from the Constitution, a document seen as divinely inspired by Christian nationalists, and the Bible, the originally divinely inspired word, charging us to care for one another, a charge we as society have not yet lived up to. The photo of the sculpture, placed in a church sanctuary, is a key piece in my exhibition. It is a sculpture titled Phantom Limb and is currently sitting in the vestibule of First Presbyterian Church in Ann Arbor. Its absence in the gallery space is important as it forms a cross-disciplinary conversation that is so important to my work. The half-burned pew floats ominously above a wooden plinth supported only by a bronze leg, referencing both the form and materiality of a monument. But the work was made in mourning, once again thinking about the belief systems that prop up society and the public memories we choose to evoke. Sitting in the vestibule of the church, this piece finds itself at home among the plaques and furniture of the church sitting room, a work to discover, ever present but not necessarily jumping out at you, and so different than a piece sitting stark and powerful against the non-neutral walls of the gallery space. I'm an American. I'm an evangelical, and yet I never feel like I belong. In a way, who really belongs here in America? Everybody tries to carve out a place, to find their nooks and crannies. And I guess, in a way, therein lies the hope that there is room for change and a place for everyone. Grace and redemption, where we can confess that we have never been a perfect union, that may have hurt others, but from a position of humility, we can ask forgiveness. We can move forward into a brighter future, and maybe that is the idealistic hope I have for the future of this nation as well. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you, Ben. And now I'd like to introduce our next speaker, Christine Bruening. Christine is an interdisciplinary artist with a Bachelor in Fine Arts from Pennsylvania State University. Her work focuses on how the Western canon of art influences contemporary visual dialogue and how that thread of conversation in turn informs values and belief systems. In her current work, she is examining the aesthetics of horror movies and the visuality and acceptance of fear and gore. Through this body of work, Bruening shares an autobiographical narrative navigating assault, pregnancy, the isolation of quarantine, and the fear of motherhood. Christine not only produced her thesis exhibition, but she is also a new mother with the arrival of her baby son, Everett, about a month ago. So please help me in welcoming Christine Bruening.
Thank you, David. I am going to share my screen now. Right. Can everybody see it? Okay, awesome, thank you.
Yes.
So I'm going to introduce my work. So in my practice, I reference the fake corn syrupy kind of violence that often occurs in bad horror movies. I examine horror through a feminist lens and complicate some of the common critiques leveled against the genre. The way that we often speak about violence manifests in a top-down language, as in they keep making violent movies. My argument is that if the market for this content didn't exist, they wouldn't make it. So my work encourages viewers to be curious with me, curious about why we make this kind of content and how its popularity and subsequent proliferation serve us. So my show was called Permeable Bodies. This is what you see when you enter the space. And this is the first piece, part of the group show that was made in collaboration with Ben and Christina, examining issues of disembodiment. So the first piece I wanted to talk about today is permeablebodies.com. I created a website because it was really important to me, as David mentioned. I was home quarantining pregnant for most of the year, and I wanted to create a digital installation of my show that someone who was in my kind of circumstances could experience. Throughout quarantine, my relationship to my home shifted, and I thought a lot about the role of the home in horror and how that speaks about a relationship with domesticity. So as viewers navigate through the space, they encounter different photos and 3D models and videos I made over the past 2 years exploring the aesthetics of horror. So the next piece that you encounter is this photograph. It is a self-portrait that I took when I was 39 weeks pregnant. Depending on who you speak to, when you say the name Frankenstein, they either think of the doctor or the monster. This conflation of identity also lends itself to a conflation of responsibility. Is the doctor at fault for his hubris for bringing the monster into the world, or is the monster at fault for his own actions and violence? So when I found out that I was pregnant with a boy, I was terrified about my ability to raise a white male in American culture. I also, throughout my pregnancy, thought a lot about the character of Norma Bates in relation to this idea. So the mother in the film Psycho, she's often cast as the monster, despite being dead for the duration of the film. Even in this when this final twist is revealed at the end, it never really results in a transference of blame. Despite being a corpse, the film implies that she's still at fault for Norman, the real killer's actions, because of her lousy job of raising him. So despite this injustice I feel on behalf of Norma, it didn't ever kind of leave me off the hook in terms of the responsibility I feel to not raise the kind of man who will fade into the folds of toxic masculinity and violence in American culture. The physical version of this piece is printed on satin fabric, and the folds from the image being shipped are still visible in the installation, which I think is a serendipitous kind of failure, as the image includes a peak of ironing board. So it's a nod to the stereotyped notions of motherhood and inherent failures within that. The other photograph that's opposing the Frankenstein piece is that of the final girl. The photograph's a reference to the horror film trope of the final girl, which is a term coined by Carol J. Clover in her book, Men, Women, and Chainsaws. In the genre, we follow the final girl into the end, watching her endure unspeakable terrors at the hand of some monster until she eventually emerges triumphant. Typically, she manages to survive by relying on her intelligence, but eventually co-opting the monster's violence, thus, in a sense, becoming a monster herself in the end. Through the final girl, we can ask, when is or can violence be justified, and who deserves vindication? For this piece, I wanted the story behind the girl to remain ambiguous. We don't know if she's the monster or the final girl. We don't know if she's covered in her own blood or the blood of someone else. Is her smile sadistic, or is she relieved to have survived? The final piece that I have in the show is concerned women looking out of windows. It's a video piece of concerned women looking out of windows collected from horror movies. This piece illustrates the anxiety surrounding the notion of home and the American dream in horror movies, as well as the gendered vulnerability of women within the genre. Despite the fact that these women theoretically have the protection of the house, that security is fallible and the killer always gets in. When we consider this phenomena within the context of the implications of domesticity and the notion that home is where a woman belongs because she is safe. The anxieties presented within these films throw a wrench in that idea and make it clear that women aren't safe no matter where they are. If we consider the invasion trope within the horror as a metaphor for the body, we can think of this invasion as an assault. In the show, the piece is projected upon a window and only plays at night. The context in which the video can be viewed mimics the settings of the scenes, and this parallels the point of the realities of the anxieties presented in horror. That's my last slide. I want to thank you all for listening and sharing this moment with us.
Thank you, Christine. And now I'd like to introduce our third speaker, Nathan. Nathan Byrne works in sculpture, installation, collaborative art making, and time-based projects. His hybrid art practice generates a spectrum of wonder and inquiry as he investigates themes such as devotion, memorial, mysticism, reverie, revelation, and perception itself. His work is represented in numerous collections around the country. Nathan holds a BA in studio art and art history from San Francisco State University. In Equally Empty, Nathan Byrne transposes a space from a graphite drawing by Bay Area artist Dean Schmidt into an immersive spatial encounter. It's wonderful to have Nate's work in the show as a conceptual counterpoint, a work that single-handedly examines our sensory world and the possibilities of a quiet, meditative experience. And if you do have a chance to go down to the gallery, I encourage you to take part in this experience. So please help me in welcoming Nathan Byrne.
Okay. Does everyone see the Equally Empty?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. I want to thank the deans, all the faculty and staff and studio coordinators I've had the wonderful opportunity to work with while here at Stamps. All right, so I'm mostly going to focus on the work, but my practice, to put it in a nutshell, is about the embodied experience of space and its relationship with inner experience of self. My title is a truncation of a Tibetan Buddhist prayer I came across in my early 20s in the book Dharma Bums by Jack Kerouac. This is a prayer that that's been important to me throughout my life, and that's led me to an interest in Eastern philosophy and sitting meditation, which has informed this work. I have a short quote by Nagarjuna, who I came across while researching the relationship between my artwork and Buddhist themes. And there's another quote by Nagarjuna that I wanted to share. There does not exist anything that is not dependently or originated. Therefore, there does not exist anything that is not empty. This project found its beginning in this tiny graphite drawing by the artist Dean Smith. When I came across this drawing of a labyrinth, I had a strong desire to build it. I had been studying architectural plans and had the idea of asking Dean if I could build his drawing. And that's how this project came into fruition. When making this installation, I, as David had mentioned, transposed the space of the drawing into a physical experience. I designed this installation with an awareness of the site As passageways were to be so narrow and also ending in dead ends, it was important for the work to be circumnavigatable. The viewer crosses a threshold of curtains to face the entrance and a second threshold of what I call the inner sanctum. Within the dimly lit space, the viewer is surrounded by the sculptural columns which line the perimeter of the interior. The warm light radiates between the columns and follows you as you navigate the space. The sculptural panels on the back wall center and unify the asymmetrical architecture. It is in the center of this space where you find a sweet spot of ethereal sound emitting from above. Within the space, the viewer finds themselves immersed in an interior that's evokes spaciousness, meditativeness, and is meant to be a transformative experience. Here's a detail of the light emitting between the columns, which define the perimeter of the interior and create a unity to the space. Okay. Here's a shot with human beings standing within and outside of the work to give a sense of scale. The interior is brightened for this particular photograph, but in the work itself, it's more dimly lit. The view on the left-hand side of the work shows the artist book on a podium to the left, and then at the back of the room, there's the drawing by Dean Smith, which provides a legend for the space that's mapped out physically. The book is meant to be read under UV light as it's printed with white ink on white paper. Here's another view from the back. As you can see, the pathways are quite narrow, and they can be walked by certain body types with great difficulty. But it's not necessary to walk the paths to experience the piece. To me, the labyrinth passageways provide an enclosure for the sacred space that's in the center. And as you can see, the shadows make a drawing on the floor of a second labyrinth. Part of the project was a simultaneous release of an artist book and also an album. The artist book and the album were both opportunities. Well, they were platforms for collaboration, and I had the opportunity to engage with Dean Smith once again, who contributed a short prose poem called "The Tunnel," and I worked with a print designer, the architect who was helping me with architectural plans for the project, also contributed to the illustrations, which were the front and rear cover of the book, and these are based on actual plans for the installation. The podium itself becomes a sculptural object as I engraved the cover of the book in the center of the space of the podium. Let's see here. I purposefully picked a podium that was non-religious because I had Ben Winans as a neighbor. So I tried to make mine as secular as possible. It's another shot. So underneath the UV light, the pages glowed with this luminescence and kind of a purplish glow. The album, which was also released, I got well, anyways, I had an opportunity to work with the composer Emmerich Anklum, who also goes by Distant Reader, who did the score for the installation itself, which is a long form ambient composition. And then the second track was there's a reading of the text that's in the book, which is it's text by Gordon Matta Clark, where I mined his archive of index cards and created an epic poem from his words. I'm reading the poem, and my reading is surrounded by a melange of field recordings by Emmerich. That brings me to the work in the front room. Here's an example of an index card by Gordon Matta Clark. The index cards for this artist were a way to map out ideas. And as I was researching them, I realized that they made up a spectrum that ranged from silly to incredibly poetic. This particular text was an important one to Gordon. He wrote it 3 times that I know of on various index cards. And I created a hybrid of his index card, and then also I was looking at his cut drawings, particularly the cut drawing on the floor. This is the work that I made. It's called Making the Right Cut. And it's 475 laser cut sheets of paper that are in the proportion of the original index card. The open face was important to me because it could read as a book's edge, and this was a way to engage with language and space. Here's my second work, which is in the front room. This is called From the Pencil Zone, and this is looking at the relationship between drawing and sculpture. As you can see, these nubs of graphite crayon they seem to be sinking into the surface of the mirrors and also creating the illusion that they're double-sided. Let's see. This was a chance to emphasize illusion, refraction, light, and repetition in another sculptural work. These graphite crayons are from a drawing suite that I had made the previous summer, and I had held on to them, and they ended up making it into this work. So this was another reason to use a found object and engage with the material in that way. All right, that's it for now.
Thank you, Nate. And now to our last speaker, and to all the guests and friends of the artists who are joining us, a special welcome to you, and thank you for coming out. And to our guests from Korea who are zooming in, 안녕하세요, and welcome. Rey is a visual artist from Seoul, Korea. She connects diverse communities by inviting others to shape and fill curated blank spaces. Rey has a BFA in animation from Sejong University. Screaming Yellow is a social sculpture in the form of a pickup truck, a fake politician's persona, and short films that explore identity, culture, and diaspora. Rey deploys a truck replete with its own stereotypes related to whiteness and masculinity as a mobile platform to project BIPOC faces and to propagate their voices. The speech Rey gives in the truck's bed touches on fluidity, invisibility, and empowering others to scream. The small group discussions are connected by a string of questions like a water drop turning into a deafening cascade. Please help me in welcoming Rey Jeong.
Thank you, David. I will share my screen. And Okay, can you see the screen? Cool.
Yes.
Hello, everyone. My name is Rey Jeong. I'm a second-year MFA candidate at the STEM School of Art and Design. My thesis show is entitled Screaming Yellow. Before diving in, I want to thank those joining the MFA virtual reception from South Korea and here in the States. Thank you, David and Stamps Gallery, for creating this space for us to share our creative works with people all over the world. So first, I'm sharing the overview of my thesis show space. When you enter this space, you can see the yellow pickup truck surrounded by 5 yellow chairs and TV screens. I was able to receive fundings to purchase a 2001 yellow pickup truck from Atlanta. This truck was renovated into a Korean politician's election campaigning truck by installing a 65 inches TV. Since my first year of MFA, I've been conducted qualitative and quantitative interviews, and those interviews evolved into small group discussions. A total of 6 small discussions took place with 21 participants, including me, myself. 6 hours and 25 minutes of discussions became 5 separate films from 3 to 15 minutes long. The films cascade into one another. And this pickup truck functions in 3 different ways. First, it is the stage. This is for Asians to speak their stories. On the pickup bed, there is a chair and a megaphone with microphone. And you can come up and speak up.
Growing up, I always sort of felt like I was neither white nor Chinese. And just in the last few years, I've started thinking that I should start embracing or trying to come to terms with being both Chinese and white.
Thank you, Ellie, became my model for this work. And then second, this is the mobile screen this is also a mobile screen so that I can drive to my yellow, black, and black people who are working and living as essential workers. Third, on the back of the TV, there is a billboard with my own screaming face. I became a fake politician promoting my face, Asian woman. So I tried to break down the stereotype of Asian woman as well as the stereotype of pickup truck. My project was invited to the video room at the Duderstadt Library last February. I tried to give minimal directions during the film discussions. Only one request I gave to my participants was asking one question while looking at the camera at the end of discussion. So the questions became prompts to the next discussions, which functions as a bridge between the past to the future.
What do you think America is? Where would you consider America?
I think America.
I have a little lag.
It's a place where you have a lot of conflicting emotions all the time. Have you ever been racist towards?
Sorry for this inconvenience. So I was I wanted to share this video.
Someone of your own race.
And what's like a way to embrace another culture and share it with the world
that's not appropriating it.
What can we do for future generations to give them the tools to talk about race and kind of break this cycle of silence?
So these questions are still ongoing. So this dialogue will never end.
What steps are you taking to embrace your cultural heritage and your ancestors?
And next slide is, so I'm sharing other details of my show. One is a neon installation with God Diaspora sign, which celebrates the state of diaspora. I made a behind-the-scenes film that includes my speech and the process of making, as well as participants' feedback afterwards. Lastly, I created a poetry zine. During the winter semester, I'm doing an independent study under Jennifer Mesker's guidance. I wrote 21 visual poems about my own experience as a member of diaspora. Next slide will be sharing my mini group show with Ellie Smith. So I will shift gears to my collaboration work with Ellie Smith. This work is part of the thesis mini group show with my cohort. This collaboration piece is called Water Correspondences. Water is consistent medium in my work, and fluidity is a main component of my research in diaspora. And Ellie focuses on water and ocean in her creative work. We found our common areas of water, and we started to collaborate since last October. Water has so many metaphors and meanings in culture, time, and space. Ellie and I introduce a wide spectrum and interpretation of water, for example, wild, brain chemistry, transformative, transformation, spirituality, identity, and philosophy. We have passed on handwritten water journals, for example, poem, diary, note, and essay to each other. These projects have been expanded to a zine, installations, and call and response films as process-oriented work, inviting the public to reflect on their own memories of water. Originally, the name of the work, Screaming Yellow, was based on the color of the truck itself. However, since the recent shooting in Atlanta, the name of this work has taken on a lot more context and painful meanings. I wanted to dedicate this work to the victims and the family members, those who died during this racist attack. And I want to make sure that this work as a social sculpture, as a social practice is out there in the world so that our collective grief, this is not only on the social media or in the White Cube Gallery. There is a space and audience for grieving members of my local Asian members to talk about their shared trauma and their experiences living in the white supremacist state. I want to ensure, and I really wish nothing like that never happen again. Special thanks to my incredibly supportive committees and director, David and Osman, faculty members, my cohort and my family, and my participants who are here in this space and cannot attend here. 엄마, 아빠, 창빈이 사랑합니다. Thank you for listening to my talk. I will stop share my screen. Thank you.
Thank you, Rey. Thank you, everyone. And yeah, I forgot that linkage that you bought the truck in Atlanta, but an amazing piece. Well, now I'd like to open it up to Q&A from anyone in the audience. And if you want to, maybe the best way, because there are so many, if you could write in the text and then we could go from there, if there are any questions or comments.
I have a question.
Okay, go ahead. Who's speaking?
Oh, Emily?
Oh, hey, Emily.
Yeah, hey.
Yeah, go ahead.
I would just like to hear a little bit from everyone about their kind of like hopes and dreams for, you know, the development of their research. It was so wonderful to hear everyone kind of talking maybe a little bit more in depth about their work, and I'm just curious. Yeah, what are their next steps?
Next steps. Let's see. Ben, do you want to start off with any thoughts about that?
Yeah, I guess I can start off with that's a big question, Emily. Thank you for asking.
Sorry, Ben.
Next steps. You know, for me personally, I think my work has a lot of growth still to happen. I think I touched on some things that I wasn't expecting to touch on and need to spend a little bit more time with them in order to progress. A lot more sketches, a lot more fighting with my materials. And these steps will lead me in some really productive directions, I think. But I don't want to usurp time, so please, other members of my cohort.
Yeah, please speak up if you have any thoughts. Christine?
It is a big question. I think that
I need to start off. Yeah,
No,
first
it's
of all,
okay.
great job.
It's a
You
good
did like a
question.
wonderful job. Good work, everyone.
I honestly have been watching a lot of rom-coms, and I'm looking forward to getting into physical making again. So I think maybe over the summer, I would like to kind of work on the opposite of what I've been working on, just to kind of, I don't know, just try something new, because I've been so entrenched in thinking about horror and blood and guts, and maybe something a little lighter moving forward for just the time being would be nice and fun. All right.
Thank you.
Pass
Nick?
the mic.
Hello, thanks everyone. I don't know why I didn't look at my notes. Anyways, I glanced at them in the beginning. But, like Ben said, like this project, this project for me, I mean, especially the way I made it in a modular fashion. And I made it in a way where I can pack it up and then redeploy it at another site. So hopefully I can find another site to show this work again, and then I'm sure that there will be some changes that it'll morph to the site itself, and so I'm leaving it open for new things to happen with this project. But also just looking forward, I mean, I'm hoping once thesis paper is written, field research done, I'm looking forward to, you know, doing a little bit of residency hopping as I wait for my opportunities to enter into the world of education. So I don't want to rush into just anything, so we'll see how that turns out. But I'm definitely going to try to keep momentum coming out of this program. So
Thank you, Nate. Rey?
Hi, Thank you, Emily, for the big question. Yeah, I mean, like, I'm happy to answer. So we have a long way to go still. Like, we need to write thesis writing, and also like obviously applying for jobs and also applying for the residency. But before then, I'm very excited to see my family in South Korea. And the international project is a really amazing opportunity. So I'm planning to conduct a research and the other art project with marriage immigrant in South Korea. I'm here as a marriage immigrant, so I have the connection, and also I feel more empathy to someone and people in South Korea. They are invisible. So that's my next plan. So I hope this answer is okay. Thank you.
Yeah, totally. I just asked because I see so many different directions all your work can go in with writing, and Ray, you mentioned like cross-country trip with the yellow truck and at some point, and yeah, so
yes, that's the next
yeah.
step. So
Okay,
I'm gonna
great.
do that too.
Okay, so yeah, congrats everyone.
Thanks. And that is a question from Emily Smith, one of our first year students, and I invite everyone to check out the first year exhibition online, which is on the Stamps website. Let's see, we have a question about, a couple of questions about the pandemic. So there's a question about how the pandemic affected your work. Let's see, I guess we'll ask our speakers. We'll go around the room again.
Yeah, I can answer.
Okay.
So after pandemic, my experience as an Asian woman was totally different. So I was able to capture my own experience with my participants, also Asian women mostly. So that was huge leverage, and also very bad because so many gays and the violence towards Asians, it was so I don't know what to say, but like it was the centered the pandemic itself. So I can answer that in that way.
Thank you, Ray. Let's see, anyone else? Nate, how did the pandemic affect your work?
Well, thanks, Ray, for sharing your experience. Yeah, it was tough for all of us. I wonder how many memoirs are going to come out about MFA experience during the pandemic. We'll see. But it definitely affected everyone's program. We all found a way to make work, you know. Over the summer, for a time, we lost access to studio, and that was an opportunity for us to shift gears and to, for me, I started working on a series of drawings, and so I surprised everyone with my first project as a suite of drawings, but that was a time to start thinking about space in a different way, and then kind of like recalibrate and think about what I wanted to do when I do have space again to work. But I don't want to say especially affected, but the fact that I tend to work on a larger scale, I was affected. I had to re-navigate my normal ways of making. Anyway, so yeah, it was tough for all of us.
Thanks, Nate. Christine, do you have any thoughts about the pandemic?
It's a little funny because my experience with the pandemic is so intrinsically linked to becoming pregnant and then being an at-risk person because of that. So, and then working remotely from Pittsburgh and then being pregnant. So those are all linked in my mind, and then moving to making completely digital work because it was important that my work not be translated just through photographs for me. I didn't want to have critiques where I was like, it's cool in person, I promise. So it affected the whole way that I made, but I think it helped me grow a lot as a maker, and I have an angry baby right now, so I'm gonna pass the mic to Ben.
Thanks, Christine. Yeah, I think that the pandemic for me, I had already started moving in a much more introspective space before lockdown happened. I think what the pandemic did for me was gave me not much more to focus on than current events and news. And I sort of immersed myself in that, probably to an unhealthy extent. But digging deep into that while also thinking about my own past and my own upbringing really allowed me to sort of access spaces that I hadn't really considered before. So yeah.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you for those answers. And I see that it is past 6 o'clock, and we want to wrap up our session here, but I think we might have time for one more last comment or question before we close our session. So are there any?
Jennifer Metzger had a great question about language.
Oh yeah, okay. Yes.
It's just, could each of you speak to the importance of language in your work?
I can open up if nobody objects. And my cohort's going to kind of roll their eyes, but for me, language goes back to the Reformation, which is sort of the beginning of Protestant Christianity in general. And I talk about this a lot, but you know, it was a moment when Christianity divorced itself from the image and became about the word. So the word has always been very important as I sort of dug into all of the information that I was collecting and all the work that I was making. There was sort of a backdrop of language in my work. I also really like to write, so yeah.
Thanks, Ben. Let's see. Christine, I see you're busy, but maybe I'll jump to Nathan. Nate.
Yeah. Yeah, for me, I guess before I even got into visual art, I began as a writer, and I'm a longtime reader, and I was a bookseller for a number of years. So literature's played a huge role in my just personal experience with the world, and I was determined to pull language into my work. It became important to me to find a way to do that. And so over the summer, I was doing drawings of fragments of writing by the author Robert Walser. And but actually before that, I was beginning to draw with text and map out spaces with text, and in a class that I was taking with Keith Mitnick, spatial narratives, and then there's the artist Gordon Matta Clark, who has been kind of a brother for me in art. I read a book called Physical Poetics that talks about his fascination with language, and that got me really interested in his archive of index cards. And then so I was like, okay, I finally have a way to pull Gordon Matta Clark into my research, and I can pursue this archive through sculptural works and then also through text itself. And that so with the laser cut paper piece of the index card, and then also I transcribed and arranged his text into a poem, which I then read and had Emmerich create a bed of sound for was just an ultimate kind of pleasure to do a recording with language, and then also to release the artist book. So I've always wanted to do a book and an album, and I got to do both for my thesis. So, and they both involved language. So anyways.
Thank you, Nate. Rey.
Yeah. So language became very important in my work, especially in my social practice and also my poetry writing. Especially at the last discussion at the video room, I have total of 4 participants, including me. And when we are talking about the whitening cream in Asia, in Mexico, through the language, we were able to share the disgust about the whitening cream, the existence, and that became a huge core, like the language became the cross-cultural empathy. It became a tool. And also in poetry writing, I learned English as an adult. So I was always like, oh, English is my disadvantage, or I need to make it better. But this kind of like easily broken language or the grammar, very ironically, I found liberation in using words. I can experience, I can describe more of my unconsciousness and emotions. So like I was so enjoying writing poetry with Jennifer and also Ellie. So language is love.
Thank you. Christine, I don't know if you want to add any thoughts to that.
I just briefly, I think just like naming my experiences through the context of horror movies has been empowering and informational for me personally. So I think that's my answer.
Thank you. Well, thank you everyone for the questions and for answering the questions. The really great virtual opening. Now I'm going to do something. I hope it doesn't crash the system, but if you can unmute, and maybe we'll have a round of applause for everyone, and we can bid them goodbye.
Brilliant.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank
you.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us.
Everyone. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Congratulations.
That's the show. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Jennifer. Thanks, Shimoye, Joe.
Thank you.
Bye.
Best sleep.